Okay, great. Okay, well, I'm happy to start off this with talking about parents and children and relationships between them and how we can how we can help that with communication with Magical You. And I just want to introduce myself. I'm Susan Spillman, and I'm a psychologist by training. And I've been doing Magical You and its predecessor, Fast Track for Kids, about 2.5 years now, quite diligently. And I love this game. And I find that as a psychologist, of course, I learned a lot of things about parents and children and working with families and, etc. However, what's happened with Magical You is it's so fast to get to the issues. It's so fast, whereas in psychology, you might talk and carry on week after week after week. With Magical you can just get to what is going on for this child and then help the parent understand what's going on for the child. And if the child's old enough, of course, to communicate together. So that's what I wanted to share today with that kind of thing. I've been doing different kinds of relationships with Magical You, with children and parents, and more recently with groups. But Mike had some questions and some interest in this topic, and I think Jaz and Colette as well. So would you like to say anything or introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I can start. My name is Michael Grady. I'm a level one Magic New practitioner. I'm currently studying in the level two practitioner. Um, I'm a father of two children, a boy 4 years old and a girl 2 years old. And I'm very interested in this conversation with you today, Susan, because you've had a lot of experience working with parents and children, and I'm sure you've been able to solve a lot of big problems for parents and children, and that's why I'm really interested in learning about your knowledge, your experience, and what parents can do in these kind of situations. So that's why I'm here today.
Thanks. Jaz? Can't hear you, Jaz. Jaz?
Um, I'm Jaz, and I'm not usually muted.
Right.
Today I'm muting myself. I created Magical You out of a desire to help children unravel the situations that present themselves to children at the understanding of where they're at, rather than from what a parent or a teacher tells them they should do or they should be. I believe that there's a lot of stress on children to be a certain way, to achieve this, to achieve that. And I think the stress is getting more and more and more as the years go. So my desire was to help children unravel their ball of string before they needed proper therapy in later years. And I'm excited to be here because I am not a trained psychotherapist, and I'm very interested to hear what Susan has got to share with us, as well as her magic.
Okay, thanks, Jaz. Colette?
Hi, I'm Colette Garside. I've known Jaz for many, many years, and I just love her Magical You. As a grandparent, as a parent, I just wish I'd have had this game when my children were small. I can bring Magical You now to my grandchildren. I've got two 4-year-olds. I've got a boy and a girl who are 4, and I've got a 7-year-old, but they live in Australia. So it's a bit difficult. I have to do it over FaceTime or get their mom and dads to do it with them. And for me, Magical You, as Susan says, it's so quick. I've been a life coach. I've been a color coach. And people come for session after session after session, and we still never get to the root cause. But with Magical You, it's there, it's visual, and we can clear it. and it is fun. And that's the great thing about Magical You. It is fun. Thank you, Jazz.
Great. Yeah, great. Thanks, Colette. Okay, well, I thought I'd just say a little bit about what I see, how I see Magical You, and then give you some examples of what I've done with parents and children. And then we can just go from there and see where questions and things like that. So one of the main things I see about Magical You that's so helpful is that it gives the child a safe place to express themselves. And this, I think, as Jazz was saying, sometimes the parents, of course, have their own agenda about what the child should do or how they should behave, or the culture has an agenda about how children should be. And sometimes the child doesn't have that space to just express how they actually feel. And the way we play Magical You is in such a way that the child gets to say exactly what he or she wants to say and needs to say. That even as the practitioner, the facilitator, we don't give them any prompts about what to say or how to say it, that kind of thing. And so it's one of the few places, in my view, that the child actually gets to express themselves freely. And to me, this is really, really important, you know, as a psychologist, as just a therapist in general. So I want to just give you a couple of examples of kids that I've worked with and their parents and what's happened. And so one is a 4.5-year-old boy who was very, very angry. And this was a boy who, we didn't speak the same language, so he just was responding to the pictures, to the visual parts of the cards. And so we did the game, you know, as best we could, and he released quite a bit of anger, although he's the one who wanted to keep the anger first, but then once we talked about it, and he actually wanted to feel strong. He didn't really want to feel angry, he wanted to feel strong. And so very, very quickly with this game, we got that sorted out with him. So he went out and he was playing, and he really shifted his energy terrifically, so he wasn't angry at all. However, he lives in a family that doesn't understand him. And that when he cries, all they want to do is have him shut up. It's like, just be quiet, be quiet. Or sometimes they say that, and when that doesn't work, of course, then they ignore him. Okay, and so, of course, the problem didn't go away. And so what happened was I talked to his mother and just kind of explained this to her, that if she would talk to him and ask him, well, how are you feeling, rather than just be quiet, how are you feeling, that he actually can tell her, even at 4, he can tell her how he's feeling. And so she started doing this, and it shifted his relationship with his mother. Unfortunately, the rest of the family hasn't been willing to do that. They're not willing to pay attention to him and ask him. So in this case, you know, it's a great success in one way, in that he feels much better. But in terms of some of the other family relationships, they just haven't been interested. And there wasn't much I could do. They weren't showing any interest in understanding this. So that's one example. And then another one is a boy, about a 12-year-old. He was about 12 at the time. And he had a lot of issues around, it looked like he had a lot of issues around anger, but when he played the cards, it was more about sadness. And again, he released the feelings. He was feeling good. He was feeling happy. And however, when we then talked about it with his mother, who I usually see the children with their mother, sometimes the father, of course, if the father's available, but almost always it's with the mother. And so when we talked about what the game was about for this boy, this 12-year-old boy, it really had to do with, he was feeling confined by his mother. He was feeling that the mother was putting all these kind of rules on him. And so when we talked about it with the mother, he and I and the mother talked about it, it turns out that at 12, she was she was so nervous about him growing up that she wanted to keep track of him all the time. Like, call me. Every time you go out, you need to call me. You have to tell me when you arrive at the beach. You have to tell me who your friends are, all this stuff. I mean, it would have driven me crazy, and of course it was driving the boy crazy. And so this mother, fortunately, was quite conscious and aware that she had something to do with what was going on with her son. And so she was willing to deal with that for herself, to back off, to give him some space, to work out what she needed from him, specific small things, but not every single move he made outside the house. And so it made a huge difference for him in terms of how he felt, and of course how the mother felt when she saw that she could trust him. Yeah, Jess.
I don't know if you can answer this, Susan, but I'm just wondering if that situation had been brought to you as a psychologist without the game, what do you think the difference would have been?
Well, the main difference would have been just talking about it, and trying to figure out what was going on, and how long that would have taken, I don't know. I mean, it depends. With the game, it's so fast to get to the issues and to be able to explore what they are with the child. And so it's hard to say how long it would have taken, but it would have been like session after session after session to try and get to the issue and then try to resolve it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Colette.
I can add to that.
Uh-huh.
When my children were smaller, my daughter was about 13 and my son was 12. I was having big issues.
Yeah.
And I put the whole family into counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And that took us 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'd have got the game
Yeah.
and played the game with the kids,
Uh-huh.
I could have got to the issue in no time.
That's right. Very quickly. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
I think the answer would be 12 months or longer.
Yeah. 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 So recently I've started doing this, and this just came up. This was related to a girl who's quite closed. Like I've tried to engage her with Magical You quite a few times, and she just really doesn't want to share her feelings. So I thought, well, what else could I do besides the usual way? So I thought, well, I'll see if she and her mother want to do it together, do the game together. Because I was thinking that the mother, who loves the game anyway, would be a good role model for the girl, to see, okay, this is easy, I can do it, mom can do it, that kind of thing. So we did that together, and it was great, because the girl, for the very first time, started sharing about feeling lonely, not having any friends, all of that kind of stuff, which she had never said before, never. And the mother was like, oh, I mean, it was shocking to the mother. And the mother, what I asked the mother to do was to play the game also for herself, but to pick a very simple issue, because of course I didn't want the mother to get into some big heavy issue for herself, but just to be kind of a role model for the child of how to play the game and how to share. And so that turned out really well. Actually, the first time I did this, I did it with the girl and her brother together, and with the mother, so the three of them. And the same thing, the boy was very open, and he's more open anyway, but he was more open. And the second time I played this, the boy didn't want to do it, and so I played it with the girl and her mother, and she was still having some of that issue of feeling lonely, and what the reasons were. She was a little more open the second time. And then the mother got it. She got, oh, I see now, she got the whole picture. She got the big picture of what was going on with this girl. And then she was able to talk to the neighbors and kind of help structure the time for the girl to play with some of the friends next door that for some reason wasn't working out. The mother could kind of take charge of that and help the girl. So that's just a kind of fun way that I've started doing it with the parent and child together, with the parent being kind of a role model to help, especially children who are a little bit, reluctant to be open, to be open. So those are a couple of suggestions, and I'd be happy to talk more about other ideas, or Mike, yeah.
Hey, Susan, I'm just really interested from the parents' perspective, right? So like parents are on some level they're seeing that their child is in pain, the child is suffering, the child wants to communicate and say something to the parent. Um, and it can be incredibly frustrating for the parent then not knowing what to do in those situations, and the emotions of the parent themselves can make them feel like overwhelmed at times and not equipped then with the knowledge or the tools of how to deal with their own emotions themselves, not to mind the emotions of the child. Um, I'm just curious as to what you have noticed in your own experience about how parents can feel a little bit more calm and centered and in control in the situations where things feel like they're getting out of hand, and how can Magical You maybe help with that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. Um, yeah, what I find is that it's such a relief for the parents to get some kind of answer. I mean, in terms of playing Magical You, if I play the Magical You with the child, they at least get some sense of, oh, this is what's going on with the child. Because yes, of course they come in, they're like, some of them are pulling their hair. It's like, I just don't know what to do anymore with this child. They're whatever, they're angry, they're sad, they're withdrawn. And I've reached my limit of knowing what to do with them. But sometimes it's really quite fast, for the parent to see what's going on, because how I usually do it, if I'm not doing the parent playing the game as well, I usually have the parent sit behind the child, so they don't have eye contact or anything, but the parent's listening. So I want the parent to listen to what the child is saying, and and so if the parent is open, that's the big challenge. If the parent is open, they usually get it. They usually get, oh, I can see how I'm not paying attention to what the child needs. So, and then we can talk later, the parent and I talk about, well, what can you do different. And usually they already know, if they're conscious, if they're really conscious. Now, if they're not, if they're just like, just fix my child, actually, I'm not sure what we can do, because some parents just aren't open to looking at any part they have in it. And I haven't been so successful with those parents, to be honest.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And the one question that comes to my mind when you say that is like, after parents have been open to trying Magical You, what do they say typically afterwards? What have they noticed? What are they now aware of? What has changed for them? And yeah, I'm just really interested to know what parents are saying after they have
Yeah,
given it a go.
yeah. The initial thing they say almost always is, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about my child. I didn't understand how they were feeling. I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And now that I get it, now at least I know I have some ideas of what I can do about it, what I can do about the relationship. So it really, I mean, this is kind of my interest is the communication between the child and the parent. So once the parent gets that, and they can get that by just listening to the session, just listening to what's happening with the child.
And so like when parents now know this new information, like how are those situations that would have come up before, like are they now changing? Are they now dealing with those situations a little bit differently than before because of this new knowledge, this new information, these
Yes, yes,
tools that
exactly. I mean, the examples I gave anyway of those two parents, two mothers, that is exactly what happened. They started dealing differently with their children, and listening to them and paying attention, like, well, what is going on, rather than, I don't understand it, I don't want to deal with it, you know, just shut up kind of thing. You know, what is really going on with them? And since we played the game, they have some clues of to what's going on. And I've played the game with those particular parents and children several times now. And so they just understand the child better, and they know to listen to the child. And of course, as I think all of us know who play this game, one of the cards that the children typically pick of what would help them is listen, is the card that is listened to. You know, they really want their parent to listen to them. And the parents often are just so overwhelmed. You know, they're just so overwhelmed with whatever else is going on in their life. You know, they may have 3 or 4 other children. That's happened. Several families I've seen have quite a few children. They're overwhelmed. They just don't, they don't know how to do it, and they just feel too stressed out. So just giving them kind of a little avenue of how to do something different.
Yeah. And have you seen situations where the parent is open to working on themselves, saying potentially that if they worked on themselves, that the child's behavior or problem is solved or it goes away? Like, have you seen that kind of thing happen where the parent takes responsibility for their own issues and
I wish I had, but I haven't seen much of that. I've seen mostly parents who are bringing their child, you know, who they see as has a problem. The child is the problem, and what happens is they get the message that they're doing something, that they could change something in themselves, but they don't move to that next step of, you know, gee, I guess I could use some help. Yes. Yeah.
I've had experience of that, Mike, where the parents take or the adult takes responsibility for themselves, and the whole family shifts. I have one client, and it's a very high level of stress in the family, and I think often the stress comes from the mother, let's say, for instance, generally, or they hold it. And as she started to unravel her stress, the behavior of the children totally changed. And then when she would get something that was going on that she couldn't handle, that same vibration would manifest itself in the children. So, and what's also interesting, because I am aware of this, is that when I'm talking to her as my client, we're always sharing about what's going on with her 2 boys as well, and they totally. At first, she thought it was all about them and their, let's say, bad behavior. But I believe that there's no bad children. There's just negative behavior patterns, and when she shifts, they shift, and she can see it.
Yeah. Terrific. Terrific.
As you say, to confirm what you're saying also, is the father isn't interested. He's like, well, I'm perfect. I'm just, da, 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 da. And so it's mum doing the work for all of them. So the results are limited. And the boys will follow the dad, or one of the boys follows the dad. And it's like, well, my dad doesn't believe in it, so I don't believe in it. So mom's carrying all of that, but when she changes, the energy in that whole home shifts.
Yeah. And that reminds me, Jazz, of Get, whom you're familiar with and know. And so it didn't really come out of working with her son or daughter. It didn't come out of that. It more came out of, she wanted to grow. She wanted personal growth, that kind of thing. So that's where her kind of interest in magical use came from. And that is similar to what Jazz is saying. It's totally changed the family. Not only the family, it's changed the whole neighborhood, because her energy her energy has changed so much, and it's all the magical you. This is what she says: I'm just calling in the magical you card. Now if something's a problem, I call in the magical you card, and my energy shifts. And it's true, it's happening. And now the neighborhood is all, everybody's coming to visit and happy for her, and her business, her small business that they just started, is booming. I mean, so yeah, it does happen. But I haven't had it in the sessions, you know, where I've been seeing the mother and child together. I haven't had the mother really take responsibility in the way that you're referring to. No. But the other thing is, Mike, you're a man, right? And of course, it's so hard to engage the men very often, you know. So this would be so great, you know, if you could help the men, you know, get engaged. I've seen a few families that include the men, you know, and of course it's great, but it's rare. It's rare.
Yeah, and it's changing. I think that the role that fathers are
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
today is very different than like my father's generation.
yeah, yeah,
The world is different,
yeah.
and you know, like there's a lot that I could go on about it, and I won't.
Mhm.
But I suppose there's an opportunity there for fathers,
Yes,
men, to be able to connect with themselves and their children on a deeper level than they probably had themselves. And that takes a lot of courage to be able to go and do that,
yes,
because it means going into themselves and looking at themselves and going, well, how am I getting in my own way of being the best father that I can
yes,
be?
yes,
And and if you can ask that question to yourself and be open to what comes to you, then like playing magical you, or being open to asking yourself these questions, can just, in my own experience, help me be a better father, and I'm sure other fathers then as well.
exactly.
So I would love if that could happen,
Yeah,
and sure it will happen with time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Um, what I'm curious about is what most parents have already tried before coming to you about and using magical you. What have they done before? And you know, I'm just trying to understand. Maybe they've tried other things and it didn't work, and now they have come to you, and you tried magical you, and then you were able to solve the problem. I'm just curious of where most parents sometimes try before getting to the level where, okay, I'm ready to try out this magical you.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to know. I don't know that I can say too much about that myself. Um, we haven't spent a lot of time on that, so maybe Colette has some ideas about that, huh?
Well, I can only go from past experience when my kids were growing up. Um, Grounding. You're not allowed to see your friends. You're not allowed to have your television. These days, you're not allowed to have your iPad or your telephone. You're grounded for a month. You can't go out and see your
Yeah,
friends.
yeah,
And of course, with this pandemic, people are closer together these days. And fathers, again, are seeing their children from a different perspective because they're with them 24/7. And I think with the magical you, the whole family can play the game. And there's no rules, but the child always wins. The child has to be listened to. And the more that child is listened to, the more the parent thinks, oh, I'm the mirror. They're copying what I do. And as you, as a parent notices how they are copying the parent's behavior, then the parent can change themselves with magical you. And I think I just wish I'd have had this game when my kids were
yeah,
growing
yeah,
up.
yeah,
I wouldn't feel so guilty
yeah.
these days about saying you can't go out for 12
Oh
months, or
yeah,
I'm going to
yeah,
murder you if you
yeah,
do that
yeah,
again.
yeah. Yeah, certainly the parents have said that kind of thing, all the limiting, limiting, but of course it hasn't worked, right? It doesn't work. So mostly they just come and they're just like so frustrated. It's like, just let's try something. Someone told me this is great, this can work. Let's just try it and see what happens. They're just so frustrated. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I love about like the Magical You game is sometimes sometimes we can get in our own way when we with our own language, but when we see a picture, we can
Yeah.
connect with it on a much
Yes.
deeper level. And the way that these cards are like done is fantastic. Like you said, a lot of parents turn up frustrated, and the
Yeah.
child can feel frustrated,
Yeah.
or the parent can feel frustrated,
Right.
and
Right.
you can feel these emotions in your body. Like when you look at the card,
Yeah.
you can go, well, where do I feel it in my body? And
Yeah.
the child can know that as well. In fact, the child is nearly even better at being able to locate these feelings in the body. And I noticed this when I played a game with my son. He just is he on a topic that could be really serious, and I'm the parent and I'm the responsible one, and we're going to solve this problem in a really
Yeah. Right.
serious way. That's how you solve problems. You got to be serious.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, 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 this is going to be so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, it's here. All the bad. He said to me, all the bad feelings are here, and all the good feelings are here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like, wow,
Oh, great.
do that. And then like we went through the game, we went through the process as we were taught in the training, and then we're able to bring in lovely feelings like what does he need? He needed to be listened to.
Yes.
And like he was telling me, I asked him, who are you? And he said, that's me, and that's you there, Dad.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so that's where I got new awareness. I was like, wow, I
Yeah.
need to listen to my son on a
Yes.
deeper level.
Yes.
But he couldn't tell me that. How could he possibly tell me
No.
that? He didn't have
Right.
the words to tell me that.
Yeah.
But he
And that.
sees that,
Yeah.
and he's like, he gives me a hug at the end of the game because he goes, I was finally able to tell you something. I couldn't say it. But
Wow.
playing this game was able to help him communicate.
Yes.
And then I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I learned so much from in such a short time, and it
Yes.
was fun. And
Yes.
we both
This is.
enjoyed it. And he's
Yeah.
like, let's play the game again, Dad. Let's play
Yeah.
the game again.
Yeah. Yeah. This is exactly it. Exactly it. What happens, Mike? Yeah, Jazz.
Can I share one lovely little story? I was working with a little boy online recently, and we worked with what his mum said the issue was, and we cleared it, and it was gone. But he said we've been talking about magic and Irish fairies and things like this, and so he was quite comfortable with me. But he said to me, and I thought this was absolute magic. He said, Jazz, he said, I think my body's got one more secret it wants to tell you.
Oh, that's a great one, Jazz. Great.
And I was like, wow. And I was able, because I could use muscle testing, I was able to check in, and it was something that had happened to him when he was 2, which he hadn't remembered, but it was an accident, and the trauma was remembered in his head. Nothing wrong with his head, but it was remembered there. But it was whether it was because the issue we worked with had cleared, and then he could feel this other thing, but it wasn't part of the first problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like this, the intuition of this knowing of this little boy, but the way he described it to me as being, my body's got, another secret wants.
Yeah.
So I remember that to ask, are there any more secrets in your body that are ready to come out?
Oh, that's a great phrase, Jazz. That's a great one. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, as an adult, as you say, Michael, we can be too serious. Even us, as magical youth therapists, we're still adults, and we forget the children's language and how to be that playful. And as you say, when this boy was done, I saw his whole face change, and then he was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. They're out the door. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Super.
Yeah, like I think there's like two ways which you can like change the relationship with your child, if you are a parent, one is like focus on the child and see can they connect with the cards, with the different feelings that might come up for them in their body, and that's really good. And when you do that, it opens up a space for them to express themselves more freely than they wouldn't have been able to do maybe before. So even if you're not working on yourself, you're still working on, you're helping your child connect with themselves on a deeper level. That's what I found. The cards are so powerful because it takes all of the guessing out of it, and it just let the cards do the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it, Mike, as in terms of what I do when I'm working with the parents, I really see that I have kind of a two-pronged goal, I guess you'd say. One is to help the child release what needs to be released, but the other part of it is the communication with the parent, and to talk about what happened, and the parent to understand what happened, to kind of get it, and to then I usually give suggestions. If the parent's open, I then give suggestions of what they might want to do in terms of talking to the child, or like in that mother who was kind of over controlling her son, the 12-year-old, whether she could let him have more space, let him have more freedom, and check in with him as she needed, a little bit, for herself, but really to let him grow up, that it was kind of time to start letting him grow up. And so I try to do all of that together in a session. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. Okay. Okay. Enough for today, huh?
Thanks, Susan.
Anything? Yeah.
That was
Okay.
great. Thank you, Susan.
Okay. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. So it would be fun to have more conversations about Magical You, and who else is doing what, people doing different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll put you on the hot seat next time, Michael.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm going to stop. Let's see. Let me stop the recording.